There is a moment, sometimes in silence after an ordinary day, sometimes in the middle of a crowded room, when a person feels a tug from somewhere beneath the life that's being lived. It can feel like a dissonant chord, a soft pressure behind the ribs, a sense that the self being presented is an answer to a question no one is asking. What if the identity being carried so carefully is not the true one, but the one that has proven useful? What if who I am is a rough draft written by approval, punishment, and the choreography of a family that needed the child to fit where the air was tight? Until the unconscious becomes conscious, it runs the show, and it gets called fate. The first task is not to condemn the mask, but to notice when the mask has mistaken itself for the face. The persona is the social mask, a tool, not a self. It allowed entrance into rooms, softened edges enough to be held, made the person interpretable to contexts that reward the familiar. But in Jung's map, the mask is not a destination, it's a passage. The life that starts to itch is the one where the mask has become a habitat. The symptoms are mundane and precise, exhaustion that not even sleep solves, success that tastes like cardboard, intimacy that somehow never introduces the person to themselves. This video does not add another label. It removes the labels long enough to introduce the person to the one who has been quietly waiting behind them. Chapter 1 begins with a sentence that might feel rude to the part that loves being praised. The first version of the personality was assembled for survival. Not to trick anyone, to stay attached, to stay fed, to be loved. Childhood trains the nervous system long before it learns words. Crying that disrupts will be edited. Silence that pleases will be rehearsed. Good boy, good girl, such a helper, so independent. Praise can be handcuffs with velvet lining. Jung warns against mistaking the first adaptation for a finished soul. Personality, in his sense, is a living negotiation between essence and expectation, between the organism's native shape and the world's demands. The tragedy is not adaptation. It is the calcification of adaptation into an identity oath. This is who I am. The body knows the difference. It tells the truth by leaking energy around people who love the persona but never touch the person. The child who dreamed in symbols learns to argue like a lawyer. The boy with wet eyes becomes a collector of dry reasons. The girl whose anger could have protected her learns to apologize for being inconvenient. None of these moves are sins. They are survival. The trouble starts when the cost slips from notice. Creativity goes gray under be realistic. Sensitivity goes numb under be tough. Directness goes timid under be nice. The pruned parts fall through a trapdoor into the unconscious, where they push on the underside of life until the ceiling bows. In Jung's framing, what is denied in consciousness does not vanish. It becomes destiny. The mask that once shielded will, if left in charge, suffocate. So the first chapter asserts two mercies. Mercy 1, the mask helped. Say thank you. Mercy 2, the mask can be set down. Say hello. The adult does not need to keep paying childhood's bills. There is a person behind the persona who has been leaving hints, dream fragments, sudden envy of people who move like they own their bones, disproportionate anger toward people who have what has been forbidden. Those are not embarrassments. They are breadcrumbs. Chapter 2 shifts the focus from the costume to the stage. Modern culture uses introvert and extrovert like personality flavors. One quiet, one loud, one shy, one social. Jung meant something quieter and stranger. He described two fundamental attitudes of psychic energy, two orientations of libido, the current of the psyche. Extraversion is the outward turning of psychic energy. Introversion is the inward turning. The question is not how much do you talk? The question is, where does the river of attention value its home? Outward, toward objects and events, or inward, toward images and meanings? Introversion in Jung's sense is an inward trust, a loyalty to the subjective factor, to the archetypal layer of mind where symbols and primordial patterns organize experience. The introvert's energy draws back from the object to the inner image, the dream figure, the pattern behind the event, the meaning beneath the surface. Extraversion, by contrast, is a trust in the object, a loyalty to the external world's immediacy, to concrete circumstances and shared facts. The extrovert's energy moves toward the object, the conversation, the opportunity, the actionable next step. Both orientations are valid. Both become problems when exclusive. The world punishes people who live only in archetypes and never in schedules. It also punishes people who live only in schedules and never in symbols. Jung's brilliance is to insist on the bridge. We are built to traffic between inner pattern and outer fact, not to emigrate from one and burn the crossing. People are not just one. There is a center of gravity, yes, and there is a neglected shore. The extrovert who never bows inward becomes beautifully efficient and mysteriously shallow to themselves. The introvert who never ventures outward becomes exquisitely perceptive and strangely untested by life. Think of two travelers arriving at the same castle. The extrovert enters immediately, exploring rooms. The introvert hesitates, imagining dangers. Later, their roles invert. The extrovert grows bored when nothing novel happens. The introvert, now attuned, wants to stay longer, absorbed in details the other missed. The attitudes are not prisons. They are starting positions. A grown life trains both legs. Chapter 3 is the key ring, the 4 functions. Jung proposes that consciousness orients to life through 4 core functions: 2 perceiving functions, sensation and intuition, and 2 judging functions, thinking and feeling. Sensation perceives what is, intuition perceives what might be. Thinking judges by truth, or logic. Feeling judges by value, meaning. Each function can operate with an introverted or extroverted attitude, creating 8 function attitudes, or typical styles. Thinking. Extroverted organizes the outer world, plans, systems, efficiency. Thinking. Introverted organizes the inner world, concepts, frameworks, internally coherent models. Feeling extroverted tracks shared values and harmony in the field. Feeling introverted tracks, personal intimate value, the quiet yes-no of the heart. Sensation. Extroverted anchors in concrete facts, direct experience, the 5 senses. Sensation. Introverted anchors in rich inner impressions of the sensory world, the felt tone of experience. Intuition. Extroverted scans outer possibilities, trends, future patterns. Intuition. Introverted decodes inner symbols, images, and unconscious trajectories. Every person uses all 4 functions, but most of the time one function becomes dominant, so practiced that it functions almost reflexively. A second function supports it. A third lags. A fourth, the inferior function, is underdeveloped and unruly. It appears clumsily in stress, hijacks behavior in love and fear, and holds a non-negotiable key to balance. The point is not to make the inferior dominant. It is to give it a role so it stops seizing the steering wheel at 2 a.m. If thinking dominates, feeling is often underfed. The world becomes problems to fix, not beings to meet. If feeling dominates, thinking is often underdisciplined. Choices become vibes with no spine. If sensation dominates, intuition can wither. Life becomes tasks without horizon. If intuition dominates, sensation can starve. Life becomes visions without groceries. What is repressed does not vanish. It accumulates interest. The inferior function is rarely polite. It arrives in floods. A rational person unravels in an argument because their neglected feelings, unexplained, untrained, untrusted, take over. A sensitive person lashes out with cold logic because their neglected thinking, unrefined, reactive, sharpens into cruelty. A visionary abandons commitments because the neglected body, hungry, tired, shuts it all down. A practical person wakes one day in a quiet panic because the neglected symbol life finally demands to be fed. A simple practice turns the 4 rooms into neighbors instead of strangers. Identify the homeroom, dominant function, and the locked room, inferior. Host a 5-minute visit daily. Feeling dominant writes 1 clean decision. Thinking dominant writes 1 honest feeling. Sensation dominant lists 1 non-obvious possibility. Intuition dominant does one concrete next step. The goal is not self-violence. It is courtesy. Courtesy paid consistently becomes competence. Competence calms the inferior function so it stops crashing at inopportune times. The person moves from being a monologue to a quartet. There is a basement in the soul where the uninvited sit. They are not evil. They are the parts that once got the person in trouble. Rage that frightened a parent. Need that embarrassed a caregiver. Pride that threatened a teacher. Tears that made the room uncomfortable. Also tenderness that was called weak. Curiosity that was called impractical. Directness that was called rude. The shadow, in Jung's sense, is everything that was exiled to keep the peace. The disowned traits, the unlived potentials, the impulses that were punished, or witnessed being punished in others, and so went underground. The shadow runs lives by inversion. The trait that is condemned in others is the one that secretly attracts or repels, the very thing that cannot be tolerated in the mirror. It shows up as disproportionate reactions and repeated patterns with new costumes. Integrating the shadow is not an Instagram ritual. It is the least aesthetic work a person ever does, and the most dignifying. It involves admitting sentences the persona hates. I am capable of cruelty. I am hungry for control. I am tired of being good. I am more fragile than I let on. It also involves admitting sentences that free the light. I am allowed to be soft. I am allowed to be proud of work. I am allowed to be angry at violation. I am allowed to want. The point is not indulgence, the point is ownership. What is owned can be stewarded. What is denied will be acted out sideways. The inferior function lives in the same basement. That's why it feels embarrassing. The thinking dominant person will often find feeling there, sticky and unsophisticated, demanding a seat. The feeling dominant person will find thinking there, sharp and unpracticed, demanding a blade. The sensation dominant person will find intuition there, diffuse and insistent, demanding horizon. The intuition dominant person will find sensation there, blunt and honest, demanding ground. The basement houses the part that was needed, but unwelcome in the family economy. Bringing it upstairs will change the entire house. It will also change the family, because every person who reclaims a disowned part becomes harder to control and easier to relate to. Jung's individuation is the movement from persona-led to self-led living, from approval-anchored to center-anchored choices. It is misrepresented as be yourself. It is closer to become a self. The self is not the sum of quirks. It is the organizing center that can hold contradiction without splitting. It is a person who can say I was wrong without collapse, I am done without guilt, I want without apology, I will wait without drama. Individuation is not moral superiority. It is interior sovereignty, a government inside the ribcage that remains stable when the crowd's weather changes. It is also a threat to systems that profit from predictability. Such systems will reward the mask and punish the mirror. 3 rituals keep this work from dissolving into abstraction. First, the weekly mirror. Name one trait disliked in others. Locate its seed in self. Assign it a bounded job. My control protects my schedule. My softness protects my rest. My anger protects my boundary. Second, the daily crossing. Do one thing from the neglected attitude. An inward person makes one outward move. An outward person gives 1 hour to inward quiet. Third, the monthly room. Spend an evening with the inferior function on purpose. A thinking person chooses an art that bypasses analysis. A feeling person studies a concept that sharpens spine. A sensation person schedules an unproductive wonder. An intuitive person cooks a tangible meal and does the dishes. Making peace with the inferior is less like unlocking a power and more like removing a saboteur. What about the emptiness that returns even when the rituals are kept? That is the gap between the life that is being broadcast and the life that is being lived. The persona can be updated, not demolished. I am a good colleague becomes I am a good colleague who does not perform exhaustion. I am a loving partner becomes I am a loving partner who refuses to confuse sacrifice with martyrdom. I am a strong parent becomes I am a strong parent who models apologies. The crown moves from head to chest. The life suits from the inside, not perfectly but recognizably. There is a point where this stops being information and becomes a choice. The choice is not dramatic. It is a series of small, dull, holy refusals. Refusing to explain the boundary 3 times. Refusing to delay the thing that keeps the soul intact. Refusing to decorate the mask when the person behind it is starving. The reward is not a fireworks display. It is a new baseline, less reactivity, more ritual, fewer collapses, more crossings, less hunger for applause, more appetite for reality. 2 confessions belong near the end. The first, individuation is not an escape from being wrong. It is the consent to be corrected by life without shame eating the bones. The second, not every room can hold a person who is becoming whole. Some will prefer the first version of the person, the one who fit the script. Let them. Losing the audience that claps for the mask is the price of becoming a home for the soul. A question to carry into next week. Which function is playing too loud and which has been silenced? Which shore have you overwalked and which have you left to rot? Which basement door rattles at night and what small job can you offer the part on the other side so it stops breaking in? The answers will not arrive as slogans. They will arrive as a day that goes differently. That is enough. If this felt more like a show of caring than a lecture, click like, and the algorithm will send this mirror to the next person who needs it. Subscribe if slow, honest work trumps quick fixes, and ring the bell if staying the course is important. Now don't leave yet, there's a twist waiting on the final screen. One video shows how to stop your inferior function from hijacking you in less than 7 days. The other reveals the silent ritual that transforms the shadow from saboteur to ally. Which door belongs to you tonight? The choice is yours.